Hello everybody, and welcome back. I know it's been a long time since my last upload here for the tutorial playthrough. However, I wanted to go over a few things, and I think this is a perfect way to do it. So, what may happen sometimes is you're playing some Mordheim and you walk away from a warband for a while. You may come back quite a ways down in time of the year, or maybe more than a year. Who knows? But an important thing to do is how to kind of look at a warband and take a good idea of what you're dealing with. Now, this is a very low-level warband, of course. We don't have too much. We barely got all of our henchmen in place here. We don't even have any reserves here. Now, a thing to look at, of course, the main thing when looking at any character is what kind of gear you have and being sure to look at what options you may have as sort of a backup. Now, with our leader, he's doing excellent with some light armor here. There is the option here for some blue heavy armor that could work for a character like him. Now, in this case, and we will get into that maybe after a mission here. But what I find for me, personally, how I prefer to play it is I like my frontline melee characters to be more focused on strength and toughness, and using my health as sort of its own resource. When you have a lot of toughness and a lot of strength with heavy armor, what you can more predictably do, thanks to the toughness here, which gives you some crit resistance, you will find with him, he has a crit resistance of 9, which is respectable. At this point, you can see if he versed himself, he would be unable to be crit if he fought himself. And that's the main thing you want to focus on there with toughness. I usually stop at about 9, and the reason for that is a skill that you can get under passive, and I heavily recommend this for most of your characters if they're going to be frontline, whether they're agility based, and it's up to your own interpretation, but I often find having just the first rank of resilient here to grant extra 10% with 9 toughness required to even look at it and train it. At 19% crit resist, most scenarios you're going to find in the campaign will actually be pretty safe from crits. Not all crits, if they tend to use Vital Strike, Vital Shot to add extra crit chance, that can counter this and they'll have a chance. And strangely enough, it almost works better in that case because what they're going to do is waste all of their offensive points hoping for a crit that may have a 5% or less percent chance to crit, and that is such a low amount for wasting extra offensive points. So them having that little bit of hope works. Now, as far as story missions, there are a few story missions that you will fight demons of Slanesh, and they will have a lot of crit. I call them the crit demons. I might have even did the wrong one. 40k and the fantasy have different ones. But the one you're looking for will have they'll have crab hands. We'll put it that way. They have a very high crit chance, and that is not worth building into, as you'll have to kind of overcommit. So don't go for that. Now, getting back on point here, we do see he has the blue light armor. We'll maybe go for heavy armor. Once he gets to 9 strength, can build another passive that I like with these kind of builds, which is armor proficient. I like to wait until we have 12 strength. So to make that clear, we rush 9 toughness. They stay in light armor, get the 9 toughness, get the 12 strength, train armor proficient, and immediately switch them to heavy armor. Now, you can do this sooner if you find that they're going down in combat more often. Once you have the blue or purple quality heavy armor, it is definitely a good choice. If it's purple, just send it early. They'll be a little bit slower, but you just take your team a little bit slower to let them stay up with you. Being a leader, they often have the most strategic points, so they can keep up anyway. Where you don't want to do this is with henchmen. They will often stay very far behind. We are building them the same, and we'd like to give them heavy armor. What you'll find is you can hold choke points with these characters for a very, very long time. Now, the next thing to keep in mind that we haven't gotten really a chance to look at here, actually, we did even get 2 points here with treasures, and this is a major thing to keep an eye on, especially with your first campaign. You can pick things like this, and negotiator is always a good one. Now, if you're unsure what to pick next, as far as going forward, a few good ones here. Scholar is more planning for characters that are going to get higher level. It is very, very good for that, especially early on. Healer may seem useful. However, you'd be surprised how little that ultimately saves compared to something like Scholar. Merchant sounds like it could be good. I don't recommend it. Another major one, if you're going for a second one, Explorer is very, very good. Getting those extra quality chances on missions is really helpful, especially to get your Warband leveled up. Now, in this case, we only had the 2, and I would say for almost everybody, Negotiator is going to be worth a lot more over time. That gives you more time to build up a surplus here, and it's not really just building the surplus to be prepared for any turn-ins, it's also to keep you covered so greatly that you can begin to give some up to the other warbands. Now, we haven't done a turn-in here. Now, we have 3 days left. An important thing to keep in mind is you don't have to worry too much. They are very aggressive about you having no time left when it is the final day. They will very much have it in your day-to-day updates in red text, so it's very hard to miss. There's even a voice line for it. So if you don't want to turn it in too early, you can definitely do that. It doesn't make a difference. You're still waiting the same amount of time, whether you turn it in late or early. So if you need the money, turn it in. Anyway, now, the next thing we want to do here is just take a look at some missions here. We have a double scattered. Now, with a double scattered mission, I do not recommend these. They're really tough to use, especially if you're building your warband like this. Now, the thing with scared that makes it tough is if your warband does not have high initiative, which when you are wearing heavy armor, your initiative is going to be hurt. You can see that on all of the equipment. Light armor takes nothing. Cloth will give you +10. A spear gives you +10, which I believe is the maximum you can get on a weapon. Now, I wouldn't recommend trying to dual wield these, but it can push your initiative really high. If you dual wield like a dagger, I don't think any other melee one-handers have that kind of potential that I know of. Maces are fine because they give you the good initiative, but it is a very important thing that you go first when scared starts, specifically because of your archers. And I don't typically build my archers with the highest initiative. Sadly, ranged weapons do not boast good initiative. Short bows do, so keep that in mind. Now, this one is both around a cart. With the side objective, Crush Their Will, that can always be tough to win. Now, money's a little bit lower here, that you might be concerned for it. Especially when you get to, say, your level 5s and up characters, you may start seeing, you know, about 70 to 100 gold spent in a day just fielding them. So at that point, you're really going to need to turn in a lot of money. And I think what we're going to do is go for this one to show how Crush Their Will is a kind of tough objective to go for. It's only hard difficulty, but that's okay. I do not recommend going for brutal or deadly missions. That is a really hard thing to do, especially with kind of just getting through the game. The only benefit there is you grab more loot when the mission's over, but because of the difficulty, you really cannot afford to be running around.
Believing yourself alone in what was a residential district, you spread your warband to ransack the nearby
now, hard
houses.
Difficulty is perfectly
Just
okay
as
to
your warriors are starting.
The advancement is only a 10% in the damage and health side of things. And again, always look at your enemy to see what you can plan there. And the thing you can try to do is get an idea of how many of their team is going to be slower than you. Now, with this hero, he's very early on the turn. So what we can do with him is we can put him in a spot here. If you want to be a little bit more greedy and try to grab some things, look at the initiative. Very, very important. If they're going first, you can definitely plan for them to grab something and then go with that. Do not be afraid to use the camera to get an idea. As you can see, he'd have to go the whole way up. But I think this will be a good way to show kind of how you can get up there to get those kind of items as soon as possible. As far as the other items, I probably wouldn't recommend grabbing them. Now, our start, unfortunately, didn't get a lot of items close by. That is unfortunate, but we will work with that. And in these missions, a major thing that can happen is there's a lot of spawns here. It's really hard to choose where to go. And what I would recommend, due to the distance of the start, see what you can be next to, what you can grab. We'll see here. Looks like it's in this building, whether it's upstairs or not. It looks like we can actually go upstairs in this building. Don't actually see object here. I'm assuming... Excellent. There it is. Downstairs, a lot better. And you can see he goes a lot later on the turn. So for him, we just want to kind of put him in the way here to eat up a lot of time. Now, another thing I didn't really cover here that I did want to talk about is actually equipping your character. I kind of overlooked it because it was a mistake I made myself the first time I played. And that is not having an offhand. When you do not have a shield or a weapon in your offhand, what you will get is actually a boost of 10% dodge. And now, maybe this is just me. However, when it said I got an extra 10% dodge, especially with how low your dodge numbers will be, I thought that was a fantastic deal. However, what ends up happening is a shield's always going to be better if you can have a shield to put in that offhand. And the reason for that is even a basic shield gives you 5% in your melee resistance, which is, yes, less than a dodge chance. However, melee resistance is always effective and goes off of every swing. It's definitely worth it to do that. Another thing that you'll want to keep attention on, especially with your archers. Now, this is a perfect example here. For him, with him being at 6 points, you have two choices, and you can go either way. You can use a gun that costs 3 to fire, or you can use a bow and fire 3 times, depending on what the quality of your weapon is. For your henchmen, what will happen is when they are at 3 offensive points, you will want to use a gun to make full use of their offensive points. When they get 4 offensive points, usually about level 3, I would recommend switching to a bow if they are of equal quality. As if the quality is different, you're still going to get better damage using the higher quality. You will just miss out on 1 offensive point, but that's not a big deal for the quality cost. Put it that way. But like I said, if the quality cost isn't a difference, that's fine. Now, when they get to 5 offensive points, the thing you're going to want to look out for, and this is more of a free choice there, and this is a mercenary choice because of guns, but what can happen is your ranged characters can learn special skills to use their offensive points, and we will look at that here after we get out of this mission. Now, an important thing to do when going up the stairs, when you get to the stairs here, you might think, yes, I'll start running up the stairs. But if you look at the ring here, there's actually a good spot here. And this is maybe not intentional for what they wanted for the game, but if you'd rather run alongside the stairs, if it can start a new turn, it will give you just a little bit more clearing. Run around and get all the way up there. Now, there's only 1 set of stairs here, which is unfortunate. And I'm not quite sure the way up. However, what we'll probably do here, he has enough movement anyway, When you walk into these open windows, just go ahead and look if you spot anybody. Never hurts. We could try to climb up there, and maybe we'll try it, as they're not quite here yet. With these kind of items here, these are fine. These are probably worth around about 30 gold. Not the worst decision. So we'll go ahead and roll to climb up here. And if we stop and wait, we can see we can jump down over it. So that is what we'll be doing at the start of his next turn, and then he will start to move towards where the rest of the team is. We will grab these items. Now we get unlucky here with a shield and a great hammer, but that's not too big of a deal. Just end his turn with an overwatch. Not expecting that to happen, but at least we have it. So same thing here, we're going to pick up some gold. And we can look if there's anything nearby for him, which there is not. So we're just going to move him into position here. Help the rest of the team. Now, some buildings will not have a door, and those things can happen quite frequently. With characters like him, as he is low level, he is more likely to be targeted because of his low level. And a major thing to do, I will repeat this a million times over, so I apologize, but keeping them stuck around a corner is very important, as the enemy warband will often walk around people that are very easy targets if there is a lower health target. If they're lower health and lower level, they will always be picked, as they'll see all of the numbers they need to see, and they just immediately go for them. Now, the one difference that will happen there is if that fight doesn't seem as enticing as surrounding one of your other characters. Say he was fighting someone here, and they can go for either. They will always target this man because they want to kind of dogpile on a specific character. And another thing you can look at here, he has 188 health, which is vastly higher than everyone else. And what you can very much do as you get to these later levels, in your early levels, this is a lot less frequent, so keep that in mind with your first, the first few missions. What will happen there is the health's close enough, they will overlook it. But in this scenario, it doesn't hurt to just kind of have him setting here, just to kind of grab anyone who wants to run by, as they absolutely will. They have no interest in fighting him when there's easier fights. Now, one thing I am unsure of is if armor matters. I believe they account for that. However, I have definitely seen them attack people in heavy armor with lower health rather than go for light armor. Okay, so the main thing to do here, and especially on this mission spawn in particular, they often will rush right towards us. They will prioritize through this building. And this is just a very good spot. Now, you could run forward here. I will see if he has the distance to move to that position. Now, I don't recommend this on a normal mission, because they may spend a few of their warband characters. Actually, most of them have already taken their turn. But what you can do is move up into here. This is not a bad position to go to. And the reason for that is the only way up is this little ramp here, and that is easily blocked by one melee. And if you run into this situation and you can see their whole warband like this, take a look at what they have. So we can see they have a hero here with 30% armor absorption. He is definitely in heavy armor. And what is happening there is he's in basic quality with a helmet. But in your later stages of campaign, you'll have to make a little bit more guesswork, as the masterwork quality, or as I call it, the purple quality light armor, will also give you 30% without the helmet. helmet always gives 5% despite the quality, so definitely keep that in mind. Everyone else seems to have basic cloth, making their damage taken always to be exact. If we shoot them with this man, he is going to deal around 50 damage average, which is fantastic damage when we're only talking about 200 max health. Real question is, do we stay here or do we run back? A major thought here. Now, we do not see the leader. He is not here. He's probably in heavy armor as well, given that they have someone with 27 initiative. That is another giveaway. If someone has very, very low initiative, you will know they're in heavy armor. And if you build heavy armor yourself, you can base quite a bit off of that, just with your own knowledge. One archer is at 106, so he could be a very easy target for them as well. And what I want to do here is definitely get some characters out. Now, I will show you a positioning option here because we do have a free turn. Ignore my invisible friend here. If I flail the camera, sometimes they come back. Just a weird graphical glitch that happens on my system. However, if he's ambushing here and you expect him to charge into a spot here, that will work. However, a thing to very much keep in mind is once he does that, he will very much be the target fighting. They will go to surround him. So sometimes what you can do is kind of put a second character here. And when you set up the second ambush, what will happen is it says he can run to here. However, if he were to attempt to run to here, this zone of control blocks him. You set him up just at the edge here. No matter what he wants to attack, he will be unable to until he's made his choice. And with the computer or enemy warbands you fight, if there is another enemy here, they have their own zone of control. Now, if their enemy comes up here and tries to fight, they will run around and then try to get him on whatever angle they can get. So what you can do is set him up at this angle here, so when they attempt that little trick, they will ambush that unit, preventing all alone check. And I'm hoping I can set up that scenario here, but until we get that to happen, waiting. Now, here's another kind of consideration that I didn't do here, as I've been playing a Brutal or Deadly just before recording this, but over there is some of the Wordstone. Now, with it being a cluster and a shard, I'm going to say this is absolutely worth picking up. But you should very much consider how many turns it will take
A new
for
round
the
has started.
enemy warband to reach you. If it's going to take them 3 turns to reach you, which is very rare for it to take that long. However, if it would take them longer than that, you could take that Wordstone and have no concerns. Unless your goal is to move towards them, then you should take heed because you might get the lesser movement. There are a lot of bad Wordstone debuffs that you don't want to take, and movement is one of them. I just forgot what concentration as a skill does. That is actually a very, very nice ability there, especially for the low cost of 2 strategic points. Magic is one of those areas that I often shy away from because I am very unlucky with it. However, with him having concentration, I would heavily recommend it, especially with this Warlock. I'm sure I've already touched on it, but in case you missed it or I didn't touch on it, his ability that he comes with that reduces the enemy's chance to hit, and I believe it's by 5% on the base value, or it might be 10 and then 20 on Mastered. Anything that can reduce their chance to hit is often very worth it, especially if it's AoE. but you do have to be careful. It can hit your allies. A great way to look at kind of any melee skill or ranged skill debuffs. Every 2% you can remove from someone immediately means a one weapon skill, or even one ranged skill, if you will, one ballistic skill worth of value in terms of your hit chance. So hitting a character with a 10% debuff is effectively 5 levels worth. Okay. And do not forget, if you're using the base keybinds, I don't know if you can actually change them. I've always just used them as is, but B also switches between it. We actually got lucky here. Our negative effect was 1 offensive point. Now, that is usually very, very bad. Losing any offensive points are bad, but they will not be getting close. This man is still invisible. Excuse me, I'm getting emergency weather reports. Now, what I want to do with this man, I think we're going to keep him here. I do apologize for him being invisible. This is been a real problem for me ever since I had updated my computer, and it has been that way since. I'm not quite sure the nature of it. Paused it. Usually that will fix itself. Sometimes it never does. Now, this is being very greedy. I would recommend on the first playthrough maybe to not do it. We are getting lucky with our positive buffs. Very, very lucky. Yes, absolutely. And this is actually great to see. This is +3 movement. And a thing to keep in mind with +3 movement, that affects your charge and ambush. You can see just how far that is. And you may be excited to use this to just stand in the open and just throw that out there, and you know you're going to win. So do not do this. That is very much a unfortunate part of it, is you're going to cause your character to run very, very far towards them, and then you will be very separated from your team. Wish to do that. Funny enough, it's often better to move him back just a little bit more so he doesn't overpace your team, because no one will be able to set up an ambush behind him to help. In fact, I would recommend for him,
a new round has
do not
started.
believe in his ability to tag the other team by himself, to leave him very much behind everyone else. Never by himself unless you are certain he can take it. Now, in heavy armor, this can very much happen, only because you're not going to take crits thanks to the toughness. Now, the way we're playing this here is what I would call very passive play. I mean, it's quite clearly passive play. Though, this is definitely how I recommend you approach the mission, as aggressive play is very, very hard to get going, especially early on, because you are at the mercy of the dice very often, and when they use heavy armor, which you will see quite frequently. Oh, a fantastic hit with our first one. Only on a 70. We've actually got 2 hits on 70, but look at the damage we've pulled there. He is going to get some free hits here, unfortunately. Ooh. Okay, well, if he takes this swing, he will probably hit. Now, based on that hit at 35, this is going to be basic quality. We can loot him. We will see that it's basic quality. The main thing here is you see just how much damage we pulled. We even got the hit there. That's a very lucky set of rolls for us to get all of those. He didn't make the distance, but I don't think I can loot this man. Now, you can loot him without spending the resource. And as you can see, he had a basic greatsword. Now, here's an interesting thing at this situation. Okay? So you see this man put his ambush right there. We could try to compete with him. We very much could. However, as it currently stands, he used 2 of his offensive points, and then he has 2 more. So even if we charge into him right now, he will be allowed to swing back. And I don't want to do that as we're only at 150 health. And he can definitely take the hit, but we don't know who's coming. You have 2 choices at this point. Being, you can delay your turn, and the next 3 characters on the list will go, and then he will go again. That can work. However, I'm going to go with a more defensive here and go with the parry stance. Because if they wish to fight him, there's a high chance they will. And then we can move everyone else in. If they do not, this man is standing right in the open with 3 very powerful ranged options right there to kind of take away all of his current standing health. Oh, well, he walked into that. 80 damage is a substantial amount of damage. And we get an unfortunate crit here on 5. Those kind of things may happen. Now, he may die here if this other hero makes the distance, because he is done and that hero would get a full turn. We are lucky enough that that didn't happen. Now, we can go for a shot here, but I don't think that's necessary. We will get a lot of targets on him, and this is more guaranteed. If we aim on him, it's only 55. Yeah, that's not worth it. We're going to make sure that he does not get his option here. Okay, our invisible man is still there. Now, he has a blue one-hander, I believe. And what we're going to do is just park him right here. I cannot fix this invisible man's look here. But that's okay. We're going to go for 2 hits because we already hit him for 80. And I would normally say we could stay back. As at half health, you cannot guarantee a kill sometimes. However, we do have a stunned henchman, and I would rather keep him safe. So we are definitely going to move in all of our characters here. Now, he will not get a defensive stance here at the end of turn. However, what you will find is because he is currently not stunned and is at full health compared to him and him, they will not target him unless there is 0 other options if they run out of movement. And if we're lucky, we can bring him just low enough to finish him off. Unfortunately, not. We will see what happens here. They do have 2 more units to move, although the 27, I still believe, is their hero unit. Now, I do not know. I think he can only shoot out to there, and this isn't too bad with this unit. You take that shot there. 50 damage is a very substantial amount. Oh, I see. He even gets to stand up, which is fantastic. Now, he can't disengage, but that's okay. We'll just go ahead and do a dodge stance here. Now, if our leader gets a turn before him on the next one, if our archer is unable to finish off that unit
A new
there,
round has started.
he's unable to see anyone at the moment. So he has a 73 here. That is a surprisingly high amount to hit. I'm going to say at least 1 shot can be used here. We get very lucky again and hit on a 73. Now, an option here. Now, our reload's going to cost 3. And this isn't an important thing. It's just one of those things you can start to consider as you play it more. I wouldn't be too focused on it. But we are not going to be able to reload and shoot again. So we have 2 choices. We can take this guaranteed damage, or we can do an Overwatch. In this scenario, this guy may show up and we could stop him. It looks like he's still here. This is unfortunately a thing you can do with Mordheim. We shouldn't be able to see him like this, but we know he's standing there because it lights up instantly. As you can see, these guys, we don't know where they are, and they don't light up here. There's a little bit of a cheesy way to do this. If you can move this around sometimes, that is where he is standing. I do not believe this is intentional, but we know he's right there. So we're going to have quite a few henchmen coming out. This guy will probably not reach. Now, in this scenario, I'm going to go for the hit because he's getting very low on health. And we don't need to aim for hit chance. However, we're not going to use the points anyway, and aim does give you, in fact, 5% crit. It will probably not matter, but if you have no other choice, why not? So that pushed us from 4% to 9%. We didn't get the crit, not a big deal. Now, one situation we have here is he can't really get the ambush here. Now, I want to try something here just to show this. I do not recommend trying this. I mean, you can definitely try this. If you get used to it, it can very much work out in your favor. We're going to attempt a perception. That's already a good choice. But what we want to look for is there a trap here. Now, this is exactly what I was hoping for. Sometimes you can find traps on the floor. He is looking to ambush. And this can happen in very few scenarios. But if they take, and this is going to be very loaded on a lot of things here. Currently, he's ambushing for 2 offensive points while dual wielding. If he would take an attack, the next one would cost 3, so he can't do it. However, if we would charge him first, he will then be allowed to make a counterattack on 2 offensive points because the ambush that he set never activated, so he never took an attack. Though, in this scenario, because there is a trap in the way, what I'm going to do is walk into his ambush willingly. And when he gets his attack, what should hopefully happen is he runs over a trap. This is an unbelievably specific situation. However, now he is unable to do anything. Even if I would walk up and hit him, he will be unable to counterattack. Now, a thing I have to consider here. They have a hero here. They have a lot of henchmen that want to come in. However, let's take a look at when he goes. He is about to get a turn, so I think our better choice here is to walk up and take 2 swings, especially on a 95% hit chance. And you'll see he is unable to counterattack, even though he has 2 points. Now, we'll see if we get lucky here and roll high enough to finish him. And we do. We very much overrolled that. We'll go ahead and check his pockets here. I don't really think we need basic quality items here. At this point, we're already starting to stockpile quite a few blue. Now, he is in an unfortunate situation with only 1 movement, and you have a few choices. You could run him behind this unit, and hopefully, even if they run around, he's not going to get anywhere with it. However, in this scenario, this is much more their target. They may round that corner and go for him. So what we want to do is kind of let them do it. I would normally say do not do this, but because they're going to go for it, if I give them the option, they may run around and waste their 2 swings, and then the rest of our team can effectively attack that. Now, if you really can't have that unit going down, your better choice here, which won't work for him, but is to park as many units around his zone of control as possible, making their zone of control, making him impossible to attack. So when our leader gets to go next turn, you'll see exactly what I mean. If you look at these 3, they will be unable to approach him from any of these angles, except here. Now, they're going to get 2 units that can attack here. And he is definitely going to be coming in very soon. So if we look at him, he can do 29 to 47 damage. If you look at debuffs, this is a nice little trick here. You can look for the debuffs dual wield or 2-handed. This will tell you exactly how much they're going to spend. Dual wield and 2-handed. Dual wield and dual wield and 2-handed here will both spend 2 offensive points to attack, just like a one-hander, but then they will spend 3 and then 4. So in most scenarios, until every character is level 10 and has 9 offensive points, you will never see more than 2 attacks out of dual wielding or two-handed. So do keep that in mind if you need to absolutely make a choice based on your health. And this is a pretty broad range of damage, though we can take a pretty good choice here. Now he has 20% damage reduction, 92 health. We could let him run in here to attack him. However, we're not really thinking on that too much. If we think about this, if he would lose 20% of his health, that'd be about 26. Would still have him higher than that character. Now, only one target can reach him at the moment. So with what we want to do, I'm actually going to delay his turn, as this man will not be a target. He has 150 health. He's got too much health, too much armor. He did not make the distance. And then here comes the hero. Now, if he can make the distance, he'll do it. He did not. That gives us a lot of choices here. Unfortunately, does seem like he kind of has him covered. So here's an interesting way to handle this. And I'm sure I've showed this before. That man will be unable to fall back. What we do is we put him right here in defensive stance. He may get attacked. That is very likely. But everyone will be able to use his zone of control to make a retreat. Now, our damage source will probably be on this henchman here. Killing a hero versus a henchman is a matter of morale rather than anything else. Now, I did make a mistake there, only a slight one. However, it's I should have aimed in that scenario. I think what we're going to do with this guy is also have him take a defensive stance, as he is completely full health, no damage whatsoever. My invisible friend here also has that problem. Now, they're probably going to bring someone in here, so I'm going to leave him right where he started and delay his turn, just to kind of give him one last bit of coverage here. And now, as you can see, there he is. He's going to try to run around. He must have ran out of movement as he went for our hero here. So that now gives us a target to go for. He's going to reload, and then he's going to go with an aim just to get the 5% crit. You can see the reason he didn't make it was a -2 movement due to Wordstone. We're going to go ahead and go for the aim here, because if we have to, that will put him low enough that we can aim for a kill. Now, in this case, he has no points. It's only a 62. And how we want to handle this is we're going to make him go here, because we should be able to kind of pin off their chance to attack him based on how we do it. So we charge. Now we do get a miss. That is not too unfortunate. And we will have one guy here to kind of look at what we have. This is lining up very nicely. And as you can see, he has a little bit of an area poking out here. This is kind of harder to show with an invisible unit. However, that's fine. So what we're going to do is put him right here, and his zone of control will save him. If they want to attack him, they will have to go the whole way around. And we're having some unfortunate luck with our hit chance here, such as life in Mordheim. But he is now surrounded, and this is a unit that does take all alone checks. He is not very brave, so there's a high chance he will retreat.
A new round has started.
A lot less likely to care. Will continue doing what he needs. Now, in this scenario, because he won't have to move, I can, in fact, fire 3 times here, which I would rather do for the raw damage rather than going for we do miss a 95, however, that's okay. For archers, they are often, the way to look at them is that they are built to really bring down the health bar so your melee can finish the job. Sometimes they will be able to bring down targets just as they're low enough, but not always. Kind of have to make that decision based off what you see. So he goes for a charge here and does get the hit. A very big hit. However, not a huge deal. Now that is a totally new character. That guy's going to get his turn. If we take a look at health values here, he is at 109. He's at 92. And he is full health. Now, what I'm thinking to do here, as I'm not really able to get a kill, if I move away here, they could attack here or here. I think if we just set this up just perfectly, we can actually catch this man trying to move away and then finish him off. Although that will leave one character open to attack, but we don't have much of a choice there. You just have to hope that they can take the damage. And that unit is now out of action, which just ends the turn. I'm not sure where he's running to. He actually misses his swing on our invisible friend. Does get a secondary hit at 29 damage, and that is okay. We don't have too much going on here, so our choice here is to get damage. We're going to try and hit this man on that. Okay, so he got crit and stunned. Now, at this point, your best bet is to finish him off with a melee. If our ranged character was going next, I would actually say not to use him there if there's other spots available, only because melee often gets a lot more swings, especially when one-handed. And with melee, while stunned, they are guaranteed hits, while ranged is not, only improved chances to hit. Nothing good here. Now, with what we have them actually below their value for their routing check. At this point, unfortunately, the chances to get the secondary objective is very low. Often, I would say do not go for secondary objective when you have to steal from their cart. It's very, very rare that you can pull that off without leaving very exposed units, and it is not worth it. It's very likely, because this is early game, that they're going to leave here shortly. Just in case they do not, what I will actually do is set this man to Overwatch, as their heavy armor unit will be showing up if they pass. If you look at his damage numbers, he's about here. Again, you're not supposed to really be able to pinpoint their position, but there it is. Yes, he can do quite a bit of damage. He is two-handed, so he can swing twice, so he can do effectively 110 if no armor. With that in mind, he could take this man down in 2 swings if he manages to match roll. And sometimes you'll just have to take that guess, or the gamble, if you will, if you believe they can hit it or not. So we will see if they flee. They did actually stay. See, his problem here is he's using careful approach, and this is another entire prospect.
A new round has
that
started.
I've been talking about lately, where depending on how you build your warband, they will be able to look at what kind of stats you're using, what your bias is, whether you have a lot of ranged, whether you have a lot of crit resist, those kind of things. Now, if you have a good portion of your units being ranged, if you hit enough of a breakpoint, I'm not sure what that is, you will see them use abilities like the one he did there. If we take a look, it gives him 20% range resistance, but he loses movement. Now, what this skill does makes sense thematically, flavor-wise. All of it's fitting. However, in this game, ranged is not the main concern you should have when moving in the fight. And they will often look at a team of 3 or 4 archers and will bring counters, which is careful approach. What ends up happening is what you just saw there, where they will definitely throw away turns in very, very strange, unusual ways. have a target there. This is a 60. Funny enough, we're only going to get 2 shots here. We're actually going to go for 1 shot. And we will just use the rest of the turn up here. Now, what I'm going to do is try to throw a blinding light. Only catch him. Now, I'm not going to have him be fighting here, as we have a lot better targets, so we're going to do a concentration. This is a very greedy throw of magic, because if we get punished. We did not, fortunately, and the only reason I'm scared of that is due to the fact that if it were to punish me, we could have done an AoE punishment that gives us all open wounds. That hurts greatly. And we have a sort of choice here. Now that we've killed that other target, they're going to get another roll here if they're going to stay. Do I believe that they will stay? That is the real question here. We'll go ahead and just go for the damage here and start taking him down. We get a very lucky crit on 2%. And the thing is, yes, he did resist his stun, but just like all crits, if you take a look at that, he now has the open wounds, which reduces his melee hit chance by 10% for the rest of this mission, unless you bring a potion for it. Did not pass their second check, so we will not get to see that in action. That is the real value of critical strikes. Critical strikes can seem like something you want to do to hit very, very hard, though the main reason you want to build crits, in my opinion, is if you want to look for stuns and open wounds. Because open wounds go on every character when they are crit, except for zombies. That is the only unit that specifically has a immunity to it. I do not even believe any bosses or any warband has immunity, just zombies. Now, we did not get the secondary objective, which is unfortunate, but that one, like I said, is very, very tough. I would not recommend it until you are very, very accustomed to the game. It is a secondary objective I myself do not go for really ever unless the opportunity is very blatant. If both carts are right next to each other, and especially in the early game with how slow units go due to a lack of strategic points, it's just not worth it.
Vanquishing the foe upon the field of battle is a great feeling.
Task
It is even better when you're getting paid for it.
Okay, and there we go. That's another objective win. Now, we did get away with some wordstone, which is very, very nice. Another problem that may happen is you'll see that sometimes your best character will stay very much ahead of everyone else because he's going to get most of your kills.
Outstanding.
Just how it
Remarkable.
goes. We did try to find some armor in this mission by looting some of the boxes. We did not get fortunate there, but I will say that our blue weapons here
progress.
are very, very nice for pushing us ahead. Got 45 gold. We can sell this potion. As far as consumable potions, I am not really a good target for that to tell you which way to use them. My stance on it is that I rarely use those potions. Very rarely. In fact, that was only worth 10 gold to sell this. It increases your melee hit chance by 15% for 2 turns, not stackable. Increases the chance to roll permanent injuries, megalomania, and amok if the user falls out of action. They don't say how much, and this side effect isn't actually that much of a concern, as you'll probably not be drinking that on a character that's have any fear of them going out of action. However, this debuff won't matter on some characters. If they refuse to flee when in melee combat, these two don't do anything. I believe Amok... I'm trying to remember which one's which. They both basically do the same thing. but one of them makes it so you cannot cast spells or use ranged weapons whatsoever. So, obviously that would be bad to get on a character using range, but funny enough, it's only melee hit chance. Now, you could get this on a melee character that's built to disengage. It's unlikely that you'll use this ever. In fact, I'm going to recommend selling it. In fact, I sold it there. Now, the potions I would recommend keeping heavily is your healing potions and your poultices, or specifically your open wound removers. These are fantastic spells. Pardon my choice of word. They are fantastic potions for story missions to take care of any problems. These potions do not rely on them keeping you alive, but they're fantastic for your main story mission character, or if you have a dot on the character that's going to do damage at the start of their next turn, and this would sway the difference. That is the exact reason you want to use it. Now, an interesting thing with these ones here, the blue ones are just as good as the purple ones. The purple ones will remove 3 as opposed to 2. Though, oftentimes, you should hopefully not have more than 2 open wounds on a character. At that point, they're probably hitting nothing, if not already out of combat. Healing potions, like I said, only for dots. You can stack a lot of them to bring someone back in, but even with 5 of them only healing 20, that's, only 100 health. It's not substantial with how aggressive the damage is in this game. Pendants are a fantastic item as well to keep in mind. Let me look here at some of these skills. That's an interesting one, the chain shot, which I'm not utilizing at the moment. If I had blue bows, I would switch them over to the bow. However, they have the gun. This has armor bypass, which, funny enough, is actually not a great stat early on. It is not a substantial bit of damage. Doesn't add anything. We can see we didn't get many points here to put in. Now, he's at 9 points, so we're going to stop with the toughness and go into strength. Yes, there is resilience, and you could go to 15 toughness. I mean, not for him, but in any character that you can get 15 toughness, I would not recommend maxing resilient, as, like I said, there's very few scenarios where that is worth it. And in those scenarios where it is worth it, you would probably still want some of the side upgrades you can get, as opposed to spending 4 skill points on this ability to master it. You could spend it on 2 entirely separate skills that might shore up some weak areas or very specific situations. That's usually not bad. Now, an interesting one here with him, I believe, yes, with the parry, you can reduce it. Swift reaction basically means if he parries, he's going to get to back for free. So combat expertise might not be too bad. However, if you are building him to utilize combat expertise, though I wouldn't recommend it, the main reason for that being, if you're going for parry, you have probably a shield on. Shield specialist gives you 10, flash parry is 20. That's already 30. You could do that to push it just a little bit further. It seems like overstacking it, in my opinion. Though if you have nothing else, they are cheap and quick to train. Yeah. For melee characters in Mercenaries, they don't have a lot of choices here. However, for your ranged, sniper shot is in fact very, very powerful. Though sniper shot is only utilized, I would say, by henchmen, because they can use a gun, and then you just, if a henchman has a firearm instead of a bow, they're only ever going to shoot once anyway. And then this will just utilize all their points. It gives them an insane high chance to hit no matter what. As 50% hit, chance to hit is insane. That is a very high amount. It's 10% crit, which isn't too bad. Would effectively give them a 19% crit chance with that ability. It is something to keep in mind. I do not believe there's any follow-up to that ability in this scenario. It may be under some of these, perhaps, though I don't believe so. So you would just kind of have to go for that. Alternatively, if you want to build a gun using henchmen, another thing you can do is go intelligence for an active skill, which is introspection. Although it costs a lot of reload, they would be unable to move, but you could get away with shooting twice with a gun with that unit. If you get introspection, you will need 9 intelligence. I do not actually recall. Now, this is more planning builds that are late game. I would probably not go for that, honestly. I would just go for the sniper shot for that unit if you're going mercenaries. And one thing I want to kind of stress here, because I've recently run into it myself, funny enough, is if you're picking a warband to start with. I believe we put everybody's points in. Let me check here just to be sure. Sure I've mentioned already, but my archers always max toughness. It's very, very useful for them. Crit resist and range resistance is really the name of the game for them. You would think maybe dodge would make sense so they can climb a little better and get up to the points they need. That's true. However, archers have plenty of time usually to position themselves before a battle. That doesn't help you as much as you would think. Once you're in a battle, you're probably not going to spend precious points climbing when you could just be shooting. So, moving on here, we have this unit, which, what I will say for leadership in most characters, if they are not immune to fear and terror, you're going to want to reach over 50% at the minimum if you can help it. Very, very important. Now, if they're immune to it, it is not a concern. Just ignore it, and you'll be fine. And another major thing here where I was going earlier is maybe you've been watching this and, you played a little bit of Mercenaries. Maybe you didn't really want to pick Mercenaries anymore. That is fine. Switching is always a good idea. I would probably not build this character with weapon skill like I did, but that's okay. We will work around it. He actually has very, very low martial stats for a character. You will be getting accuracy whichever way you build him. But anyway, back on the point here. If you get these warbands and you decide to try another one, which is very much a fun part of Mordheim, is trying all the different ones. Or maybe you just didn't want to try Mercenaries and you picked a different one, like I did. And I want to go over this for a very specific reason before we leave here. If you're picking them, I want to be clear as far as your choices are here. All of them are perfectly usable, though be wary of chaos. I picked them myself, and I don't recall this when I played way back on my first warband. However, there is currently a bug with the Act 2, the first story mission of Act 2, where you're fighting on a bridge. The reinforcements that spawn in that mission are supposed to be henchmen or just basic hero units. However, it is making the heroes respawn due to how they made the mission. They are spawning as able to do impressive unit damage and attacks, which ignores the dual-wielding detriments completely. So definitely something to keep an eye on. If you're concerned about that. If you still want to play Cult, you can. However, when you get to Act 2, I do heavily recommend that you do not start the Act 2 Story 1 mission and make sure your team gets leveled up well past the value that they ask for due to this bug. Other than that, like I said, all of them are fine. Now, an interesting thing is, as far as story missions go, the witch hunters and the undead, in fact, do have, from my recollection, much easier story missions to complete. Not by a ton, but often they, as being DLC, I think they created the story missions for them later. And they're usually a lot more compact in terms of how much distance you have to cover when doing a story mission, which is really nice, as most story missions are very much a war of attrition against you while reinforcements keep showing up. And you usually have boss level units, especially in Act 2, that are very, very dangerous. So if you didn't pick Mercenaries, do keep that in mind. But once again, everybody, sorry for the long delay here in this tutorial. I wanted to get back into it here and maybe finish this as a full playthrough. You guys can let me know if you want to see it go through the whole thing here, and you can kind of see every basic mission and how I kind of look at them and how I approach them, as I often do forget the story missions outside of the base understanding of what they're asking. So most times you will see kind of a way to look at them and pick up information on the fly. But that will be it for the video here today. So I want to thank you again for watching. Good night, good afternoon, good morning. Whichever the case is for you, I'm out of here. Stay majestic.